recently that Queen Elizabeth's favorite icebreaker question was, "Have you come far?" Which I find quite charming. There's a certain sort of Britishness to it. It's rather clever and a little unexpected, and it kind of provides the other person a couple of different ways to respond. You know, they might comment on their journey or where they're from. It's a good icebreaker. I like it a fair bit more than the typical one, which is, "What do you do?" That's a tendency to define ourselves simply by what we do and not by what we are. Now, for me, when I'm asked that question, "What do you do?" there's typically one response, but with varying inflections. Something like, "Oh," or "Oh," or any sort of various permutations. I don't know what they all mean, but that's what typically comes out. Regardless, it's a normal part of small talk, and it's somewhat indicative of how people often understand themselves. People getting remembered for what they do or what they did. But what we are has a certain priority. And there's a couple of qualifiers that you might add to it. For example, a person could be a golfer. That could mean a lot of things. That could mean that they are a former college golfer or they are a professional putt-putt player, you know, anything in between. Or perhaps a man who stole something, they're a thief. But that's not the only way to describe them. After the theft in question, they might become something more. They might become a forgiven thief. They might become a restorer of stolen goods. Related, we often use the word useful as a synonym for good. We might say, "I hope you find this useful," when we mean, I hope this is good for you. Perhaps there's a temptation to overemphasize our actions that can lead us to prize our jobs. You can be proud of being a manager or supervisor or writer, but what kind are you? Are you supportive? Are you collaborative? Are you tyrannical? Anything in between? And of course, being sort of the top person is preferred, being in charge. No one aspires to be the understudy, right? No one aspires to be the backup. And the danger of having an important job could lead us to think that we are important people. The reverse is also true, that the lack of some important position or status might make us think that we are unimportant. It is an error to believe that someone is either a somebody or a nobody. A similar confusion happens in the gospel this morning. Jesus, as he's having this ongoing discussion with James and John and then the rest of the 10, he mentions the rulers of the Gentiles. He observes them lording their power over others, the great ones exercising authority over lesser ones. St. Catherine of Siena wrote one time to a particularly prideful and pompous prince, "You desire lordship over others, but have no lordship over yourself." Which makes a pretty fair point, that there's not much point in managing others when we cannot always manage ourselves properly. And of course, Jesus responds to this situation by offering himself as a model. So we get this famous phrase from the end of chapter 10 here, "For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." That phrase, "for many," comes from the Greek hoi polloi, which often refers versus sort of the riffraff, the rabble, the rank and file, the everyone else. And that same phrase echoes in our ears at every Eucharist. As the priest holds the chalice and says, "Drink this, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins." Jesus, who dies for all of us, the riffraff, the rabble-rousers, the lowlies, warns against seeking lordship and power. He reminds us that He, our Lord, came to serve us. But of note, he doesn't do this with any sense of humiliation or putting down in any way. He simply does this to demonstrate His supreme love for us. The context of this demonstration is quite remarkable. In a quick moment, we see James and John clearly kind of missing the mark. All the while, Jesus perfectly demonstrates this genuine love, this love which means being willing to ask how you are doing to your neighbor, demanding sympathy and empathy of the asker requires a person caring beyond themselves. Here in Mark 10, James and John, just a few moments before, had heard something rather ominous from our Lord. Right before they asked what place of honor they might get, Jesus had just confided, just 3 verses before, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered to the chief priests and scribes. They will condemn him to death. They will mock him, spit on him, flog him, and kill him." It's a dramatic prophecy, but it's also Jesus simply sharing of Himself, confiding to His friends. And just 3 verses later, James and John ask, "Please let us sit at your right hand and at your left in your glory." Sort of a remarkable lack in reading sort of the social situation. Jesus just confiding about His impending suffering and death and what's on their minds. What can be made of this? For one, we could recognize for just a moment that the desire to be close to Jesus is not wrong. It's somewhat misplaced. But when we look at how Jesus responds, we get a beautiful image. He's incredibly gracious. He calmly explains, "You don't know what you're really asking." And it's the other 10 that are upset with James and John. Jesus demonstrates once again that He is simply not like us. Jesus reminding us of God's comprehensively compassionate nature. Jesus is this servant that Isaiah, that we read in the first reading, that hope that would bear the guilt of others in suffering. Jesus, like us in so many ways, yet not tempted as we are, says the letter to the Hebrews. Jesus, that perfect high priest. And the Word incarnate, Jesus, reveals the compassion and benevolent philanthropy of God. He shows us in Himself that God doesn't do to us what James and John did to Him. Because God cares. His desire includes us. All this means if the Christian life is meant to conform ourselves to Christ, it means our capacity for sympathy must likewise be conformed. And mercifully, we have help. During the Eucharist, in just a few moments, just before the priest gestures to the bread and wine, they will say this: "As our great high priest, He ascended to your right hand in glory, that we might come with confidence before the throne of grace. We read that beautiful image just a moment ago from Hebrews 4, reflecting on the nature of our great high priest. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need.